It's the wee hours of the morning. An insomniac, a writer, sitting in front of a blank document with just the slow blink, blink, blink of an empty Word document. He's got a window to his left. It's dark out there. Nothing moving. Nothing really to notice or to pay attention to, except every now and then there's a rustle, almost uncanny in its timing. Just when he thinks he's going to write his first word, there it was again. Did you hear it? I didn't. He did. The character did, but I didn't. I don't think I did. No, I didn't hear it. He sits and he waits for inspiration to strike. And no, it just doesn't come, and it bothers him, and he begins to curse the keyboard in front of him, and he begins to hate the T key. It's in the middle top, and he wants to press it, but it doesn't start with a T. This story doesn't start with a T. So why does he want to press it so much? Oh, well, there's the rustle again. Almost like movement in the night. Very strange, distracting. He keeps looking at the window for some reason as though he's going to see something, but there's nothing out there. The rustle came too soon that time. It was almost back to back. It was the third time. There's nothing. Leaves, wind, it could be anything. No, that wasn't a rustle. That sounded like somebody stepping on a stick. A cat. Has to be. Some cat in the backyard thinking it's some kind of... Well, there was the rustle again. It's very strange. He was on the edge of it. He knew it didn't start with a T. It started with something else. What was it before the rustling started? Why did he hate the T so much? And then he started writing. And he started writing this workshop. And if you feel robbed, well, so did he. My name is Tim Hayes. I'm a Butte College instructor for English, and this is Horrible, and the workshop to help you engage horror. Now, what I just did was open a horror type story. I could have kept telling the whole thing. Hold on, let me get out of the woods. Find a more suitable place to set down. Here we go. Yeah, so it is something to say that horror is all about tension and all about getting you on the edge of your seat, pressing you forward, straining to hear what comes next. That's the draw. That's what draws your readers. For writers, though, it's hard to capture what it is that makes your readers lean in, because not everybody feels tension the same way we do. But there are some rules of thumb that work most of the time. And I'm going to give you, after I give you those, I'm going to give you three kind of go-tos for where your threats come from, not where your plots come from. But in horror, like other types of genres, conflicts are not really the same in horror. The threat can develop from the very beginning and move throughout. And it's not just a conflict the whole time, but it is a threat. And that's the important part. an important distinction to know your threat versus your conflict. Now, if you're writing a story and you know anything about the story arc, the conflict is when everything comes to a head and you resolve things, hopefully. In horror, that threat might not show up until the conflict. It might build all the way until that point where we're not sure where the threat is coming from. Or it can be like many of the slasher films were made, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where the threat is people are dying. It doesn't really coincide with conflict. It's just the threat. So I'll give you those three. And I have a Stephen King novel for you for each of those three, which is kind of fun. Thank you, Stephen King, for being so productive and prodigious in your writing. The first kind of tidbit I want to give, and this speaks to the Padlet that's attached to this workshop. I just gathered a few books and a few movie references and some exercises for you. But the point of the Padlet anyway, is to show you just how many genres horror reaches. It seems to have its claws in everything. And that's the cool part, because if you're sitting there and you're looking at your story that you've started writing, or your idea for a story that you've had, and it doesn't necessarily fit in the genre that you perceive as horror, it doesn't matter. It's okay, because you can always add horror into it. That's the best part. And that horror, the way it is in fiction, that will add to the tension that your readers feel for your characters, and actually, in some ways, will help you write more compelling characters for your readers. Because the number one rule of horror is you need to establish a character that the reader knows. So it's really important to have a character that your reader can identify with, can know on a personal level, kind of get an idea of what their hopes and dreams are, maybe even something that will allow them to strive for something and work towards some goal, something that is normal that another person can identify. And this might be, going to school. This might be, going to grad school, or getting a job, or going on vacation because they've worked themselves too hard. All of these things, all of these goals, put the reader into the character's life in a way that now the reader cares if your character makes it through. And then here's the other little tidbit. Horror is special in this way. There is always, always real danger for your characters. This is not for the faint of heart. In horror, everybody's up for grabs, including your main character. And that needs to come across. And maybe you don't kill them, maybe they survive. It's entirely possible. In fact, there's a lot of horror where the main character does make it all the way through. They're the only ones who make it through. But the point is, they were in danger the whole time. And that danger needs to come through in several different ways. Either psychological scarring or physical scarring. They need to pay a price to get through the story. It sounds a bit macabre, but that's kind of the point. They need, horror needs its pound of flesh. And it always collects. If it's done right, if it's done to the point where the reader is shaking their fist at the book as they read it because they can't believe you did that to your character, how dare you? That is a win for the writer. for the reader too. And in essence, that's what your reader, that tension and anger and hope and dread, that's what they're after anyway. So that's what they're here for. So give it to them. Okay, so enough on that. The three threats. Now, there's a, in math, there's always an outlier. This isn't always true. But the three main threats that you'll find in horror are what I've observed in horror are as follows. External, an external threat. The easiest one to go to in Stephen King's library is It, an extra dimensional alien, dresses as a clown and lives in the sewers. It's an external threat. It's a threat to the characters from outside of themselves. The dread and all of the scariness is in the missing children. It's in the monster itself. The fear comes from what's observable. It's external. The second one, and I'm going to come back through them with what the strengths are for each one. The second one is internal. And that one's a little harder, but The Shining. The Shining is a man going mad, a writer going insane due to isolation and writer's block. I'm pretty sure Stephen King was channeling the same thing I was channeling just now when I was telling the story. The point is, if your threat comes from an internal, that's your character going insane. And there's some tripwires in that for you writers, creating a character who slowly goes insane. But that's an internal threat, a breakdown of kind of who we are, a losing of oneself. That's an internal threat. The third one is a metaphysical threat. And metaphysical threat I define simply as any kind of supernatural, any kind of, that's Cthulhu, any kind of outside threat that changes you from within. And there's an argument that Cthulhu is an external threat. We can talk about that. But the point is, in the end, metaphysical represents things we cannot reason. Even as crazy as it is, with aliens and such, metaphysical is, you can't see it. It's demon possession that manifests itself through a body, but it's invisible. So it's spiritual. It's any kind of possession or magic that is invisible. But it's it is what it is. It is what it is. It's we'll get back to it. It's got some flaws to it. So internal or external, sorry, mix that up. External threats are your average slashers, Michael Myers, in books, pretty much anything that has a psycho killer in it. Those are all external threats to the character and attack the character and threaten the character. One thing to keep in mind when your threat is external is the dread that you build, the slow pacing that you build for this external threat. It's really important to know when to show your external threat. If you hide him or them or whatever, if you hide your external threat and reveal them when the reader is most surprised, that helps your reader not just feel the dread, but also feel the fear when that reveal happens. So it's important to know the timing of a reveal with an external threat. You do it too soon, I mean, there's nothing wrong with writing a slasher. You can write it. If your story is about a psycho killer, go for it, if that's what you want to do. If you want to make it scary in a way that your readers will be on the edge of their seats, you'll time that reveal to be at the most unexpected time. A drawback with external is that you might fall into the hacker slasher genre, and in all honesty, you can still reach commercial success with a slasher. I think that's a genre that will never go away. Also, external threats that have gone commercial and had a lot of success are zombies. Zombies, I think, are starting to get played out, but if you can come up with a new outlook on zombies, you can do a good job. The same with vampires. Vampires have been done to death, and pun is intended, but you can still find a way to make them unique just by your own creativity. Just try to keep it away from becoming yet another cliche. Internal threats. Internal threats are the really slow burn. Internal threats, 99.9% of them, and I feel like 100% of them should have an unreliable narrator. And by that, I mean the story is being, if you're telling the story from, which you should, from the point of view of the character going mad, that's a slow process that gradually builds. And I'm reminded of the Telltale Heart and The Shining especially too. These are things that time slows down and drags on at the same, just drags on and on and on. And it's hard to tell what's real from the point of view of the character. Everything seems normal at first, and then slowly things start to become more and more unreal, and more outlandish and fantastical. These are this is an unreliable narrator. So downside of that is it's hard to do well. Unreliable narrators are tricky to write. Their level of difficulty for them is a little higher than your normal. Because again, remember that tidbit, you got to get your reader to know the character on a personal level. If you've accomplished that, then creating an unreliable narrator out of that character, it has a tendency, if not done well, it has a tendency to put off the reader. So it's a tricky trick, but if done well, it is an incredible effect in a story. For metaphysical, I used Cthulhu as an example. A creature from another universe, I guess, kind of like it, but not, who doesn't appear in our world so much in so much as he drives you mad and then appears in our world. But Lovecraft was writing from an idea and a mindset of characters being driven mad by an outside source. And that's the difference, I think, for me, between metaphysical and internal. you're still going mad, but it's something outside of yourself driving you mad. And possessions, I'm thinking like House on Haunted. How is it? House on Haunted Hill? Wow, I totally flubbed that one. Uh, the Oh, the Haunting of Hill House. Wow. See, it is early in the morning. I'm just telling you right now. I had to get into the vibe. Uh, the Haunting of Hill House is ghosts and um, kind of the possession of inanimate objects. This is metaphysical. We don't have a way to explain that as an external or even an internal. So anyway, the point being with metaphysical, it's kind of like magic in fantasy. It has its own rules, but really it's all about how far you can convince your reader to go. How much can they stretch uh, their belief to what you're working on. It's why you see a lot of metaphysical stories being demons and uh, spirit possession and things like that, because those are kind of the ropes. Those are the easy places to find. They're easier to explain. They have a history that you don't have to work at too hard. Um, they're harder to write more original stuff. It's one of the reasons why I think Lovecraft saw the success he did was because he took something like metaphysical madness and mental damage and made it brought a new angle to it. it if you can if you come up with your own, then that's great. That'll sell. um, People love stuff like that where it's danger they can't predict and danger they can't really understand. Um, the unknowing part is interesting to them. So those are the three. Um, One of the things that I like to think about with each of those is that they're sometimes hard to distinguish. Um, you can mix and match and kind of fool your audience. You can have an unreliable narrator um, who isn't going mad, who uh, I'm thinking of the movie Memento. Um, he's not going crazy. He just doesn't remember. And so he's having to rebuild his day each day, and it threatens to make him go insane. But Memento is not a horror story. And there's the key. It has a horror element. It has a part of horror in it. And that part of horror is that he thinks he's going insane, that he's struggling internally with this affliction he has. And he's desperate to find out what he's forgotten. So that's one of the bigger things about horror, is that it's in everything, or can be in everything. One of my favorite genres is it's a subgenre of horror. It's called dark fantasy, which is simply fantasy with horror elements in it. And one of the main rules in fantasy that you often find is that if the hero wins, the hero survives. And some of the more traditional fantasy, if the hero wins, that's happily ever after. In dark fantasy, your hero is much more flawed, and if they win, they probably lost most of their friends. maybe a hand or a foot, or have a bad scar somewhere, or they have some form of PTSD where they saw too much fighting and too much blood and too much battle, that they're just rattled uh, from being in conflict. The thing they went through has left them scarred, whatever that scarring may look like. Um, I don't know why dark fantasy is one of my favorites. It just is. It has two of my favorite things mixed together, and they work great. Um, check out the Padlet for some of my favorite books in there. I put a few. I also put the elements to dark fantasy in there. There's 4 of them or 5 of them. Well, now I can't remember. Point is, there's some elements there that if you want to write a good dark fantasy, you can find those. But also, the Padlet shows you that there's a lot of subgenres, a lot. And I didn't even list, I just listed some of them. It's almost a never-ending job to look at all of the different things that horror puts it, you can find horror in. So that is kind of the introduction. One of the things I really want to touch on before I go to what I feel is kind of a game, maybe it's not, maybe it is one of the things that is close to the heart of horror, is not necessarily tension. It is dread. And the distinction I want to make between tension and dread is this. Tension is kind of what helps your story, pulls your story along. It's anticipation. It's looking forward and waiting to see what's happening. It's striving to move forward. Dread is looking back over your shoulder. You need both in a story, in a horror story. You need tension of moving the story forward. The characters need to want to escape, right? If you have a killer in the woods and your characters decide to stand there and let themselves be killed, it's not all that scary. In fact, it's kind of dumb. So the tension is them running away. The dread is they're running away, looking behind them and spotting the killer catching up to them. So it's a key move in horror to have tension and then an immediate moment of dread. And there's a simple kind of rule for this in writing, and this is pretty technical. Not that it's hard, it's just technical language. The best way to do dread is long descriptive sentences that set not just the mood, but the setting and the state of being of the character. So just like I did with the in my story, the opening was long and descriptive-ish. If I was writing it, it would be much longer, but it's not the point. But then you saw I started focusing on the T key. Well, that was just that's just dread. That's just a welling up of emotion that ramps up everything else. And it's a emotional response, and it's short and to the point. I hate the T key. Why do I hate the T key? It's a move in dread where you go from these long, beautiful sentences to short staccato sentences that are punchy, that jump out at you. that are filled with emotion, but it's a shot of emotion. It's not a you're not explaining or talking about anything. You're just having the emotion. And I did it kind of in an oratory way, so I had to take a few shortcuts. But in your writing, you really want to make those emotions show rather than tell. Obviously, you always want to show rather than tell in times of tension. It's the same in times of dread. Your dread should be short, scary acts that the character feels, or that that the reader feels, just in your pacing. So when you're looking at your writing and you're reading through, your dread is those long, beautiful sentences followed by those short staccatos. Those are your ways to ramp up not tension but the dread. The tension is the response to those things. So you would have a little bit of dread, and then what's the character doing about it? Then what the character is doing about it ramps up the tension. So that's a small distinction, but it's a good distinction to think about as you write, in bring in little bits of horror into whatever story you're working on. Okay, so a little bit of fun. I'm not sure how to do this, but we're going to try to do this. You're going to have to pause this, I think, to do it, but maybe not. We'll see. I'll put little pauses in. But the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get a piece of paper and something to write with. Or if you're handy enough to, have two monitors and you're watching this on one and typing on the other, that's fine. Or if you can do it on one monitor, of all the ways to do things, you'll figure it out. You're going to need to be able to write this down. So the first thing you're going to want to write down is a normal, everyday place where you go. Okay. Obviously, we don't go very many places, but you would go. If the world was normal again, if everything was back to its usual, a place you would go on any day of the week, just you'd show up there. So write that down. And then what you're going to want to do after that is think about what kind of people you're going to find at that place. So if it's a bar, you'll find a bartender, maybe some patrons. Depending on what time of day you go, it could be hopping. It could, so it could be a really packed, or it could be really kind of sparse, almost empty. Depends on what you decide. All right. So you got the people, you got the place. Now we need the thing. And I'm maybe not pausing fast enough. Anyway, the point is, the thing. In horror, the thing is the threat. So whatever the threat is. Are you going to have an external threat? Is it going to be another character who's the threat? One of the characters in the place? Is it going to be your character? You're not sure. Is it internal? Is it somebody in the back slowly drinking themselves into oblivion? What is the threat? Is it going to be metaphysical? This is a demon-possessed bar that only serves watered down tequila? Yeah, just throwing things out there. So once you have your person, place, and thing, your threat, now here's the hard part. Take whatever three things you have and change them. Same rules, same thought process. A different place, different people, a different threat. I'll give you a minute to come up with those. Okay, so once you have your new 3 things, this is the task, and you can pause this. I'll do a short pause myself to let you pause it. Now that you have your 3 things, write a scene of dread. Some setup for your character who enters this place, who sees these people, who has this threat looming over them. Write just a little bit of dread. Okay. So if you've written your dread, here's the next part. Whatever your character is dreading is going to cause something that they're going to have to react to. This dread is building up. So whatever just happened, or whatever is about to happen, I guess is the better way to put it, your character is going to react to it. So your next move is to move your character either into the threat or away from it. So your tension is your reaction, whatever your character's reaction is. So write your reaction. What's your character's reaction to this? And this is a blank character. You don't need to have anyone in particular in mind. Okay. So whatever their reaction was, I want you to try to envision in your own story or in your own story idea how you might implement dread in your story. How can you make your character on edge, and therefore your reader on edge, in your story, regardless of what genre you're in? You don't have to write horror. You can simply use dread whenever. And it will push your reader to the edge of their seats. They will hold the book or their tablet or their Kindle or whatever. Their grip will tighten a little bit. You'll get the best dread will get you white knuckles as they grip whatever they're holding. So I hope this has helped you a little bit. I've only touched on a few things. This is a drop in a sea of nightmares. Horror is so much bigger than can be covered in just this short amount of time. I wanted to give you some tools for dread and understanding about how it works with tension but isn't tension. That's where we're at. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this has been informative. I hope you like the Padlet. It's in my opinion, it's kind of simple, but at the same time, there's just so much. I'm merely scratching the surface for you and hoping something catches your eye and you find interest that you want to delve deeper into. Please do. It will make your writing much more suspenseful, much more scary. So that's what I got for you. My name's Tim Hayes, and I hope you have a great rest of this year, and maybe I'll see each other soon. See you later.